showroll dogs were very structured life. And I know you have great examples with anthropomorphic behavior, the pet parents. But did you experience anyhow on your dogs? Like, did you have ever, I mean, like not since we awakened and tried to kind of like go so deep in the human-dog relationship, but did you have ever suffer the consequences of the humanizing your dogs over the limit?
No, actually, because I never have. I respect them as dogs, just like I respect every animal as its own entity, and it belongs and it should be enriched in the way that that animal needs enriched. So I was very lucky, but I saw a lot of things that made me question my reality.
Oh, so you was thinking that you are wrong.
No, I felt
Oh,
like
okay.
I did the right things. But
Okay.
just as an example, think about it. In the wild, in a pack, if we were to let dogs go and they would live in a pack and they would form their structure, they don't socialize with other packs. They don't cross territory and socialize with other packs. And as far as humans go, I would never be expected in a social setting to reach into somebody else's plate and eat their food. That's crazy talk.
It's crazy. Yeah, and it's playing with the fire. There is always a
Yeah,
consequence to that.
absolutely. If you're giving them food, then that's their food. You lay it down and you eat it and you leave them alone. And everyone's taught to leave them alone, just like they are at the table. Even toddlers are taught, no, we don't put your hands in somebody else's plate or my plate. You have your plate. So that's just a tiny example of what we would do.
I must say that I was not as fortunate, even though I had, entire my career. I came out from the grooming school when I was 16, and I was immediately thrown in fire of handling high-end show dogs. Like that, I didn't have time to breathe, neither time to develop a relationship to my own dogs. And my dogs before my grooming school world's dogs that I had at my grandmother's backyard, and I was going there to play with them because my parents were living in an apartment, and both of my parents come from that mindset in which you don't have a dog in a home. You just don't have a dog in a home because they are all both coming from a villages, and then the dog is to be outside, and dog has a responsibility to guard the house, to be there to protect and whatever. So I was always going to play with the dogs, but I would play with them and then I would come home, right? And then I immediately, after graduating the grooming academy, I came home, and the first dog that I groomed was a show Kerry Blue Terrier, because my teacher was an expert in Kerry Blue Terriers. And then later on, Kerry Blue Terriers and Poodles and Black Russian Terriers. So I was immediately pushed in that high-end show industry. And there, in that performing dogs, lives very disciplined structure. So I never know anything else. Those dogs require structure with the nutrition, with the behavior, with the way you interact with them, because that's what brings response. And that's why they are in the showcasing themselves, because they want to work for you. Mm-hmm. So I never kind of like enjoyed the dog in a sense of living with them like a pet, because I was paid well to work with them professionally. And when I retired, 2025, so that was like almost 20 years later, I finally said, now I can have a pet. Now I can have my own dog. And I had Tito. And the story of Tito is kind of like, I always keep repeating it every single time, because Tito was my crossroad in which I understand that actually every single pet parent should live a responsible life like I did when I was show handler, because I was showcasing those dogs and I wanted out from those dogs the best. And then the Tito is always my story in which I, kind of like bring back the memories of how bad pet parent I was. And that was a crossroad. That was my biggest humiliation of life, when I was going from a professional world. And I said, literally, when I retired, I said, okay, I don't need to have a place anymore for the dogs that would come with me and live 1 year, half a season, 2 years, right? And those dogs, I would charge for the daily routine and grooming and nutritioning and everything, kind of like going up and beyond. But Tito was something completely different. Tito was one of the dogs, the grandson of one of the dogs that I showed. And I think like we can see him, I guess, like sooner or later. And then I was having him as a pet, and I was doing like everything that I assume pet parents would do, spoil them to the core. I was going through everything else. I was then going through a breakup, and my businesses were transforming itself from the service industry into entrepreneurial way, and a lot of disappointment and a lot of challenges. I was just placing that great burden on that dog. And then as we went through our relationship, he developed extreme separation anxiety. So this is me and Tito. You see, I have him on my table,
So
I have him
sweet.
on my bed, I have him
Yeah.
on my lap, I have him everywhere, because I had, that's what you do when you love dogs, right? And for the first time, I saw what's the price of that when he turned 1.5 years. When he would lose all his coat out from kind of nowhere. But that dog was actually, his severe anxiety was because I would go to the lunch in local restaurant, like down. I had an offices in a big building, right? And
Yeah.
in the down it was a restaurant, and then I had some business partner visiting, and I went down with them to have lunch, and he stayed at home. And I got a call from my neighbor telling me that the Tito want to jump off the second floor because he's almost off the edge. That's how much he wanted to be close to me, just not to lose the sight of me, just to be by my side. And I was assuming that's kind of normal, but at that one point when I saw that his physiology is actually collapsing, because this is his body and his coat and his everything is just outcome of what's going on inside him. And that was a breakup call when I started to research about like, what did I do wrong and what is this? And actually I saw that actually a lot of pet parents are falling in the same trap, creating this, turning to a dog when no humans would be around them for support. And unfortunately, the price of that, Tito almost paid with his life. And in order to help him, I literally needed to find, I rehomed him because I was not strong enough at the time to be his pet parent. And he flourished with the guy that was actually taking care of him when I was because I was traveling a lot, and he was a standard poodle. So I would always have someone be at home with him, or he would be at my friend's home. And at one time, I actually noticed that he doesn't come to me so excited when we need to go home. And that was 1 week, and I said, that's just my imagination. But the next week, when I left him again to care for him, and I drove there, and I told Tito, let's go home. And he would do 2 steps towards me, and then sit down and look at my Valentine, that was the name of my friend, look at him and his mom, and then he would do like 2 steps towards me, and then he would sit again and look at them. And then I understood actually this dog chosen better family than I was able to give them at that time. And I cried for a month, but
I can only imagine.
he
Oh my
recovered.
gosh.
He recovered from me in no time. He was back on track, dog with a full coat, happy, healthy life, happy, healthy poodle. He loved me when I went to the birthdays or whatever, when I interacted with them. But he knew that he's going to be better off with them. And I was so blessed, actually, that I had them by my side. But that was a wake-up call. Then I started to research, and I came across a lot of studies confirming how the immune system of the dog is under attack if the dogs are in constant stress. And the constant stress is oftentimes not even noticed, because we assume that how the dog loves me, because he follows me everywhere. He's protecting me from everyone. He's doing
He
this
does
and he's
love
doing
you,
that,
but what
right?
he did was he chose their energy
Yeah.
so he could survive, because that's the first thing dogs look for.
Yeah, I was literally incapable of taking care of myself, let alone a dog. And that comes to me like a big opening curve in my life. And now we have Henny, and Henny is like a completely different story. Like, he's such a little independent dog that it's a Papillon. also comes from one friend of mine, very, very well bred. But in contrast to Tito, he has complete life of a dog. And I'm capable of providing him that space in which he can choose to come whenever he chooses to come and interact with us whenever he wants to do that. He doesn't suffer any sort of anxiety on any level. And he's literally, you know, we would watch TV and then he would be with us. And then at some moment in the night, he would just exclude himself and go in his little bed in the other room and just sleep. And then in the morning we would wake up and he would not come from the bedroom and, you know, he would sleep because he wants this night longer sleep or whatever. You know, he's here with us in the school. Oftentimes he just lay down because the school is oftentimes very busy with the dogs, but he doesn't mind anything.
Absolutely.
So unfortunately, I was not as fortunate as you, but also I own a good wake-up call to almost killing Tito with my love, because later on, through my own journey that started at that time when I discovered a family constellation therapy and undergo therapy myself, becoming a therapist 15 years later, and all kind of those journey that I went through at that point is helped me understand what I did and what the dogs are actually taking our emotional burden that we don't know how to display, and they're going to do that out from pure love, like a children would do for their parents when the parents are not capable of living the life of responsible, emotionally responsible people, and then impact the life of their children with authority. I don't say abuse and dominance, but authority that provides safety. And then when the children feel safe, then they can explore the world and learn the world and try to find a way within that world. The same counts with the dogs. If the dogs does not feel safe next to their humans, and as you said, the group structure always is looking for the leader. So if the humans are not the one to lead that little group, the dog gonna take that place, even if that's gonna cause them
switch
a life.
positions because the dog will start to see you as the subordinate or the child, and then have feelings of wanting to care for you because you're part of the pack, you're part of the family. And that's where the problems come in, because a lot of us have unmet needs emotionally. And we tend to put that on our dog. Oh, he's always there for me. He cries when I cry. Yeah, he cries when you cry. He wants you to be okay. You know, a lot of things can happen to the dog.
You said it amazingly. I think I'm going to post this. Because these are two studies that I always refer to when I talk about anthropomorphism. And one of them is living studies. So they started and they kind of like keep updating it in May 2026. And they talk about, in the abstract, the opening statement is, it's widely accepted that physiological stress and mental illness can compromise the function of the immune system. Clinical and epidemiological studies on humans recognize that specific physiological factors such as stress, chronic depression, and lack of social support are risk factors for the development of and progression of cancer. So that's how the story opens. And then when they come to they explore the behavior, and it says like particularly stress can inhibit the immune surveillance, activation of the T cells and cells NK, which intervene in immune surveillance against tumors. So when the stress hormones such as cortisol and others endocrine mediators can promote or actually help tumorous cells grow because there is nothing to kill them, nothing to fight against them. And then when they studied actually the behavior of the dogs. So they said like in oncologic group, there was attention-seeking dogs that were like, so 68% of the dogs that developed cancer were actually high attention seeking, following their people across the home everywhere. What we would oftentimes consider, oh, he loves me, so he's always around me. He follows me to a toilet. So 68% of these dogs develop cancer. He said a percentage of the dogs hiding without any specific reasons increased to 75.6%. And the fearful fireworks or gunshots, dogs were like 62% increased possibility to develop cancer. And aggressive dogs and behavior towards people, 67%. And 68% to oncologic dogs that showed aggression towards other dogs or other animals. And the percentage that the most highest percentage would be chewing excessively parts of their body, and significant higher oncologic group, or chewing on anything when the dog owners are not present, 74%. So this is not something that we are talking, exploring 15%. Oftentimes the 15% can be showcased like, oh my God, 15%. We are talking 62, 68, 72, 74%.
And you
So
know what
this
I'm
is,
hearing? As you're
yeah,
listing all this thing off, all the behaviors of those dogs mean lack of confidence. So they
that's
had
what
no confidence and they had no autonomy. And adult dogs are adults. They're not even babies. Even though we love them and they're our babies, they have to be treated like adults. So they have to have autonomy. That means time to sniff, time to make their own decisions, teach them how to make their own good choices. And they will do all the things that they want to do and all the things that they need to do to keep their mind healthy. So it's a lack of confidence that we're robbing them by doing that and treating them like little babies. They never get to grow up. They never get to make their own decisions. They never get to sniff the sidewalk or the ground enough. And I think that's one of the number one things we withhold from dogs. Oh yeah, I take my dog for a walk every day. Yeah, but do you allow them to stop every single time they want to sniff? A lot of people don't. They're like, oh, come on, we got to go. I have 20 minutes or whatever. They have to be able to fulfill that because it is so much a part of themselves.
and also, we live in a house, and there is a very busy yard in front of us where the people are taking dogs up and down the street, right? And I see a lot of pet parents walking their dogs, and I see every single one of them on a phone, either talking to someone, listening to music or the podcast. No one is connected to a dog. No one is actually there for their dogs. They're just doing it out from routine because they are doing it for the dog, and actually turns to be a burden to the people. And when the dog feels it as a burden, then no one wants to be burdened to anyone, especially to ones you love so much.
Right.
Then that's another layer of the burden that we put on them. That's our unpresentness. And we would say, oh, well, I'm ADHD and I cannot afford, and this is my mind need distraction and things like that. But we do very little to fight that back with right food choices, with healthy choices and discipline of, exercising and making, go to the bed like earlier, like 1 hour before the bed, turn all the blue light out. So there is a lot of tools that we can kind of like put in play in order to hijack our hijacked brain, already hijacked brain by social media and the world in which we live. And the dogs can be a great catalyst for that, because oftentimes we don't want to do good for us, but oftentimes the dogs are the only maybe the children can even grow up enough to get out from the claws of their parents, but and then choose for their life what they're going to do for them, because occasionally children are going to grow and they're going to have like 20 years and 30 years, and maybe there would be one time in which they're going to have, okay, enough with the BS of you, I'll just going to move on my way and do with my life the best I can. But the dogs can't. The dogs don't have that pleasure, and the dog's life depend on our choices, and everything we do from love. And oftentimes so much damage is done in that journey. And nevertheless, you had a story with the Mozart as well, like little Bichon, right?
Listen to this one. This
is there more on top of Tito and me? And
okay, just listen. Mozart was the most delightful Bichon, just a delightful young dog. And I met him when he was maybe a year old and groomed him nearly to the time that he passed. And his parents were never had any children. They didn't have relatives nearby. They never had a dog before. They didn't have a fish or a cat. Look at his precious little face. He was really precious and gentle and deserved all good things. Now, this is not even a black mark on the parents. If you don't know, you don't know. They vacuumed the outside porch before they let him go outside. When they walked him, he wasn't allowed to sniff anything. When he came into the place where I was working, where I groomed him, it was a vet hospital at the time, he wasn't allowed to sniff the floor. They'd immediately say, leave it, leave it. He could not operate under the function of dog at all. He was to be pretty at all times. He could never dig in the dirt or play in the mud or run in the grass, any of that. They were meticulous people. And like I said, it's nothing against them. It's if you don't know, you don't know. And how hard is it to discuss this with someone who doesn't know, who doesn't want to know? No, this is our dog. We're going to do what we want to do. This dog was so oppressed. I watched him for 3 weeks when they went across the seas to visit their family. And for 3 weeks, I let him absolutely be a dog. When we walked, he could sniff. He got to lay in the grass. He got to drag sticks around. He got to do absolutely a bunch of dog stuff. And because that's how I treat my dogs. That's how I love dogs. I want them to be the best dogs. And for 3 weeks, and he was really hyper when he was with his parents, always panting and couldn't hold himself together because they were high-strung people. And he didn't ever know when he was going to get reprimanded. But by the time the 3 weeks were ended and they came to pick him up, he was calm and peaceful. And I let him out for them to pick him up. And I swear to you, he was sitting there all quiet, and he looked up at me, and he looked to them, and he looked at me again. And this is exactly what he did. All right. And then he walked to them, and he never could get that back because he knew that's what his house was like. That's what his life was. And he was that way until the day he died. And even though if you saw the picture, he had such sparse coat. I can't believe I got it to stand up. But through the use of good cosmetics, I was able to get that shape. He would have been huge if they wanted him bigger around the head. If I could have got it any bigger than that, they would have loved that even more. But we did it as much as we could, and I got those 3 hairs on the top of his head to stand up just because of the use of cosmetics. But literally, he was losing hair. You could barely part it and just see a bunch of skin. He started to age faster. He wasn't as spry as he was before. And I think he wasn't able to get through his last dental, and that's the way he died. So, and that was his life. You know, he would, at the end of his life, when he came to be groomed, they had to give me extra blankets because all he would do is masturbate against his blankets in the cage. It was bad. You know, and a lot of people laugh when I say that, but is that really something desirable? Is that funny? Not at all. It was terrible. It was horrible to watch. And I've seen it over and over again.
And unfortunately, that's where we kind of that's what we see oftentimes here. For example, in a school, what melted my heart at least, because I was thinking about the way you spoke, and when you said I met him when he was a year old, right? You said, and I groomed him until he didn't die, and I was thinking like, oh my God, can you imagine the life of the dog that will actually never ever happen to experience life of the dog when you jump in with the story of the 3 weeks of his life that you actually gave him. And by taking care of him, you actually open the door how the dog's life can actually look like. So he must be on the end happy because of what you did for him, at least during those 3 weeks.
So at least I could give him that. You know, I can't say that he was abused, although in this context, we know he could have been treated better, but he wasn't harmed as far as, hitting or physicality. They weren't starving him. He had a nice, clean place to live. He was protected. You know, all those things are what we would say, oh, well, that child grew up pretty nicely, but not the dog.
But I would say there, like, we should, call it by its name, right? And what you describe from the point of the human-dog relationship, it should, no matter it comes from the deep love towards dog, and I bet if you would ask them, that dog was the whole world to them, and they wanted the best for that dog. But the perception of abuse is never on a side of the abuser. It's always on a side of on a receiving side. And that's where, even we know now that we talk about, you said like it's not physically abused and he was well taken care of. But I think it should be called emotional abuse, because I know what does it
That's
mean.
fair. That's fair.
Right? It's
Yeah.
kind of like we all know what does it feel. We are maybe not abused or bullied in a school by being beaten to death, right? But you always have a couple of people in the school, in a class, let alone our parents, that want the best for their children. And then down the road, we grow up and then we turn around and they say, well, that didn't land it as you was thinking, right? And from
And on
their
a side
perspective,
note, I absolutely offered to help teach them. They were just not going to go for that. She wanted to treat him like a baby, and he was her baby, and that was it. So
I must say, I also tried, and we see a lot of that in our school, because the school that we operate is actually the school, and then the school has a possibility to attract low income people to care for their dogs, because the grooming school provides in the environment of the students, so we can justify lower prices here. And there's a lot of people that are coming elderly, alone after the husband or spouse, one of them died. And now there is a dog that's alone and becomes the center of universe. But we also see a decline of those dogs' health. So we have a lot of I know that diagnose, maybe 25% of the dogs are diagnosed with the Cushing disease, Cushing syndrome here. And I started to talk to them, and I started to kind of like try to open the door for a little more and things like that. Nothing happened, as you said, like, oh no, it's my baby, it's my child, it's my this, it's my that. But how did we got a lot of them to listen? What were the newsletters? We were starting to sending out newsletters and starting to talk about actually, putting in play this study, trying to open the doors for them to start thinking just another perspective, to put a finger on their head, thinking, oh my God, maybe it is my baby, but come from the point that I love you so much that I'm gonna strangle you. Right? Kind of like, I love you. Oh, you are my everything. You
Yes.
are my life. You are my world. You are my love. And the dog is kind of like slowly deteriorating. It's, and they're always reminded me of those parents that wants the best for their children. And there is a violin in the morning and a piano in the afternoon, and football in the midnight, right, in night, and the school in the morning, and the weekend, everything around, and the Thanksgiving, and everything is a must and you need to, because the life is tough and you need to toughen up on time, and this is the
and
best
there's
for you.
nothing
And
left
now
after that.
kind
There's
of
nothing
like
left to just be peaceful.
So that those parents do all of that because they really love children and want to protect them in this world. But that's not what the children would want to, if they are not free to explore, make mistakes, and understand that they are loved no matter what. No,
even human children need to play in the mud and drag sticks around and put rocks in their pockets. All those things are important.
And now we have this. And then when we start, and I must say, like maybe 40% of those people first ignored our messages, and then they started to reading the newsletters, and they started to reply to the newsletter with more questions. And then we offer them like a monthly, like a free, we call it like a social hour. So we have a wine and cheese time when they all can come. And then we took a couple of them, Cushing disease. So we have a guest speakers on that. We try to, and all of that lands back to the human-dog relationship, anthropomorphism, giving them traits and filling the gaps that are not theirs to feel, to feel, to fool, to feel. Yeah, feel is the right word. I feel I was thank you. Yeah. So, and there is a lot of, because the problem is when you say, this morning, the lady came and she kept being very hard to come here, and she called him Papa. Come, Papa. Papa was the name of the dog. Come, Papa. Stop, Papa. No, Papa. Do this, do that. Come here. All right. And the dog started to be very aggressive. And I went there and the students was where it's not always the students, it's already graduate, but she was kind of like in the same room, and the client said, I want to be there, but there is a rule. If you are there, then then you're instructed how to do, not interact with the dog, because what actually happened is that the dog was thinking, and that was a perception of the dog, that she is yelling at the groomer. And now the dog just joined the fight and started to be aggressive towards the girl. And I said, like, when she left, because there was nothing to be done, it was already too far gone. And I said, like, next time, just try to be more in place, practicing what you learned. Because the first thing is not to, because now to lead that person, the owner, you need to be in your own shoes and be a guide in which she can rely that actually what you tell to her gonna be good for her and for the dog. Not just let them do whatever they want, because they don't know what they want. And you need to lead them.
That is a strange phenomenon, though, when they come into a salon and they're just coming in for a nail trim, and maybe the dog's having a little bit of a hard time. It's up to us as the groomer who's handling the dog to calm the dog and make sure everything's okay. But we have this owner sticking his head around the wall and going, I told you stop it. I told you calm down. I'm like, oh my goodness, just, how about calm down yourself, sit in the chair, read the little magazines we have provided for you, and we're going to handle this. But sometimes it can get very hectic.
So the price actually, price of anthropomorphism is extremely high. And the price of that, we maybe never, ever gonna connect the dots of that lack of structure, that we didn't provide it for dogs so they can feel safe to explore and safe to feel protected and provided for, and that our behavior is predictable, and but not in a sense that they can predict what we're gonna do, that they need to predict that we're gonna do it, that we're gonna feed them, that we're gonna interact with them, that we're gonna take them into a walk, that we're gonna do all of those things. Will it be at 7 o'clock in the morning, or 8 o'clock, or 9 o'clock, or 10 o'clock, or whatever clock because we need to allow that uncertainty to this modern contemporary world to exist, because we don't know what tomorrow is bringing. And we had a dog on time, because it's time for the dinner, it's time for this, it's time for that, then we can become predictable. And the first time we are not able to fulfill the prediction, we lose our credibility. That's my
trust.
And I learned that with my show dogs. I would have them on a strict, controlled environment. Breakfast, or some dogs ate twice a day, some dogs ate once a day, depending on the dog. Some better tried once a day, some better tried twice a day. But I would never, ever have a meal at the same time. It would be always different time. So I wanted to take away the idea of dog thinking about me not providing for them. I said, it's not yours to worry. I'm going to take care of you.
That's what keeps them confident.
Yeah. Will it be at 7 or at 8? That's going to depend of what I have to do that day. Because I need to go out and provide and hunt the deer so we can share it. Because they don't eat in the nature, they don't eat on time. And more this uncertainty exists in their life. But in contrast, it's not uncertainty of will it be. It's just uncertainty when it's going to be. And if they can trust us that it's going to be, that they're going to won't even think about that. Let alone, for example, can you imagine if you get your dog on a schedule and teach them to eat at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, a meal, and then we just got stuck in traffic and we come home at 7, or we had something more on job to do and we come home at 7, and the poor creature already vomited out because the acid is already compressed, and they vomit because the food didn't came on time. So, and physiological stress is on them, psychological stress is on them, everything is on them. And they think about, oh my God, this becomes unpredictable. Oh my God, it's not safe. Because and then the shift change. I also have one day, every single dog that I ever lived with, excluded Tito, had one day of fasting in a month. And it would be always different with different day. It would be with the dogs that that were high performing dogs, like maybe had more shows every weekend or couple of weeks. They would fast a day a week, but never the same day a week, because it will help first psychologically to release the stress from inside and let the body calm down and let the body be clean, or kind of like at least
Well,
do not trigger a lot of
it brings autophagy. Autophagy is the way the cells repair. If you stop, that's what fasting does. So when you fast, yourself or a dog, and they're used to gorging in the wild, if you will, they'll gorge and then they'll wait a few days. Then they'll gorge and then wait a few days every time they get their kill or whatever. However, autophagy happens when you're 24, 48 hours without a meal. Instead of breaking down sugars and carbohydrates and things like that to feed the body reverses and actually starts to repair cells. That's why the fasting is so important, and that's what's such an important part about it. And another thing, they have had 50,000 years or so, whatever your beliefs are, about when they started paying attention to humans. They have observed us so well and so thoroughly. They know things about us that we don't know about ourselves. That's how they can smell cancer, smell diabetes, smell whatever is going on. They already know that you're afraid. They already know that you're tired or frustrated or happy or whatever it is, because they have paid such close attention. They're experts at it, and they have all the equipment to do that. So when you are sad or down, or you're like, oh, my dog's so weird, how did he know that about me? Because they pay attention to you. And when they see something's not right, that brings frustration, that brings no confidence, that brings the trust down a little bit. The dog doesn't know if it's going to survive. Sometimes we're so emotional that they don't know how we're going to survive it. So,
and that's I always recall that from our first episode, when you said, like, from the moment they are born until the moment they die, every day in between, the only one thing they are looking for is to survive. And that was such a powerful statement that landed with me and lasted for a long time. Even to this morning, when I was preparing for this podcast, I was thinking about that, is actually that they are loving us. But look at the Tito. He was loving me because I was center of his universe, and he didn't know anything anything better than I until he didn't meet Valentine and his mom. And the moment he had a choice, and I was strong enough to offer him a choice, he made it. And it was not me. And it kills my heart on one end, but on the other hand, if I love you, I don't need to own you. And if I really love you, I can set you free. And then if it comes to me, there is one quote from the movie. What's the movie name, Vedran? Nepristojna ponuda. Inappropriate offer or something like that. On the beginning, it says, like, if you want something badly, set it free. If it comes back to you, it's going to be yours forever. If it doesn't come back, it was never to begin with. And that's such a nice way. So the dogs are actually, in this sense, pretty much in love with us out from their self-centeredness over survival. Because we are the source of survival. And we can see that in every single day interacting with the people and with their dogs, because oftentimes the dog is going to behave much better with the groomer than they're going to behave. You said, putting their head out and seeing, like, telling them what to do. But when they're out from the picture, then the dog doesn't have other option, because oftentimes the idea of them is this is final. They don't have a perception of the future. But they are coming back. They're going to be back. They might assume they are coming back, but they are always present in this moment, here and now. And out from that, on distance to that, like, actually, the entry point to that is their high-end neuroplasticity, ability to blend in any environment, in any certain time. They are looking only for one, is safety. And if our environment, like a professional grooming environment, becomes, and we have all the tools to build it that way, yet I don't know why it's going to take time. I can see now much longer and more than I assumed, but it's going to take time to rebuild this industry until the new generation of new generation of professionals doesn't build it for themselves. But as we start opening these doors, I think the high point and high responsibility of pet care professionals is to do not participate in this anthropomorphism, because anthropomorphism is abuse, emotional abuse. We can debate the level of love and consciousness of pet parents to do that, and unwillingness of them to harm their animals, but that doesn't matter. What matters is damage done on a receiving side. And that need to be raised very openly. Oftentimes we need a language to communicate that, because if you say it so strongly, people are going to just shut off and you lose a chance to approach them. But at least when we are communicating it in a professional setting, we need to name everything the name it is, right? And then to see how we're going to communicate that with the pet parents. Because the pet parents are in a way of us helping their dogs, right?
Yes. I do have a small 4 things that I want to say about anthropomorphism, where the attribution demonstrably fails. Horowitz's guilty look study is the classic case. The look appears when owners scold the dog, regardless of whether the dog has actually disobeyed. It's an appeasement display, like you'll see videos and such and that. You know what I'm talking about. You know what you did. Did you do this? And then the dogs are like, that's actually just appeasement. They don't know what they did wrong. When you're not there, that's the trigger that's okay, because nobody stopped it. It's fine. It was really fun tearing apart the couch cushion. It absolutely was. Dogs likely don't hold a mental model of a rule they broke an hour ago. Spite requires a theory of mind for which evidence is thin in the canine mind. They're in the moment. So that's why sometimes it's hard to potty train. You have to be there in the moment for them to get that association. Otherwise, outside in the backyard, in the jungle, where they live, wherever, they go to the bathroom. And it shouldn't be, nothing should be angry about having a natural thing happen. Puppies, dogs, they have to go to the bathroom. They have to pee, they have to poop. There's nothing mad about it. Just pick it up and don't say anything. And then when you catch them, say, oh, no, that's outside, and make them have that relationship with that outside when they go to the bathroom. So they don't know what they did wrong. Misreading stress signals as pleasure. Yawning, whale eye, lip licking, tuck tail is the most welfare relevant error. They're not pleasure. The dog doesn't smile like we smile. Now, some do, but it's appeasement. It's not, oh, look, I'm so happy because I learned how to smile. No, they just see that when you're happy and you make that smile, my little dog that sometimes you'll see hop up and ask for a hug sometimes, she's a smiler because I smile at her all the time. She's so cute. But she has absolutely learned to smile, and it looks hideous. It looks like she's being very mean, but that's her, oh, I'm near mama, and this is what she does when she sees me. Assuming a dog understands sentences rather than tone, gesture, and a modest vocabulary of trained words. This, along with the buttons, that you know how I feel about those, they understand your words. They do have a vocabulary, but they don't convert verbs or anything like that. They're simple sentences. That's what they understand. And you don't have to baby talk them. I talk to my dogs just like I'm talking to you. Hey, Tessa, what's going on? You are a baby girl. That is what I say. It is the tone, the gestures that I make, the movement, what she has observed me to do over the period of her life. Those are what her cues that she attaches to. So those things are something to think about, because dogs just don't act or think human, even though they kind of do in our interpretation.
Yeah, and you put it perfectly, and I also love Horowitz as a author and scientist, and I recommend their books for everyone that wants to further investigate this journey. But also, in order for us to understand them and to provide them not only species appropriate food, but species appropriate interaction, species appropriate care in general, we need to understand them as a species, and we need to allow them to be whatever they are able and capable of being. And the only way we can do that is to give them space. Give them space, and in that space, in that vacuum, in between us, the communication happen, the interaction happen, the love happens. But then they are given choice, and you said it very nicely. Ignore the bad behavior, ignore the undesirable behavior, because dogs are very, very clever, sensitive beings that live in a present moment. And if a behavior does not bring attention, does not bring any interaction, and does not bring any results, they're going to just disregard that behavior and try to grab our attention on the different ways. So, and also kind of like we call this positive reinforcement, oftentimes associated with food. But I also, as I explored and learned about animal education through the Watson's experiment. So Watson is a very interesting figure in the science of behaviorism, because he laid foundation for the behaviorism, in which he said that behaviorism, much more we behave, is an outcome of our environment and influence of the environment, and genetics plays, but not as much as it would environment in which we are raised. And genetic behavior and behavior genetics was actually put aside with an amazing scientist that I know we both love, called Rupert Sheldrake. And, because I love every single time when any of my thought process like this now slowly happened and, transferred it back to him.
Filters through.
Yeah, filters through him. And maybe we just came to a point in which we can explore the theory of resonance maybe in next episode or in some episode that are following, because I think it's very important for our work and for understanding not only the dog under the coat, but the life under the shape of the species anyhow, like what governs the humans to behave the way they behave, and when is how the mass and critical mass behavior actually impacts us, regardless are we aware of that or not. We just follow that because of the critical mass theory. And all of those things are very crucial to understand the dog's behavior, because and I came back to Watson. He was first his PhD work was called animal education. And he was actually studying the rats and development of mouse's brain, in which he was, so he was not training the animals, not training rats to go through the maze into the food. He was just giving them the option to kind of like have a food immediately. So that was a control group. The control group had a food, and the other guys needed to go through the maze in order to find the food. So no one was forced to do anything. They still had the food, but the better food was on the other side. So they didn't need to go to the other side of the maze. They were already kind of enough, but then slowly they understood that if they would find a way to go through the maze, they would get better food. So what we find was actually that every single generation after was able to solve the same maze much faster, and like some message was delivered through, but he was not able to locate the messenger, like how this idea is passed by on the gene, because through the genes, because that didn't make sense. Even today doesn't make sense until the epigenetics was not introduced into understanding of the world around us, or actually our own behavior. But then he said, like, the girls, I mean the mouses that were solving the problem had a much more gray mass in the brain that were one that were not actually need to solve anything. But a very important thing in which he concluded was the mouses were giving a choice. And when they choose to learn by being inspired, and that inspiration come from within, not forced to do any change in the behavior, but the behavior is self-induced, learning curve is self-paced by every single individual, our brain changes, our brain gets much more silver mass that actually is a myelin sheets around the neuron, in which the transfer of the neural signal gets much faster, and we are able to solve much faster logical and very complex cues, but only if that mass is self-created. Everything else can be led to and can be and that's called learning. So the object, the teacher, is teaching the subject, but the subject, the student, is a learner. As the change happens in the physiological change is happening in the brain of the learner, because the teacher already knows the topic, right? But if the student is inspired to learn and then self-induced with the desire to learn and solve the problem, their physiology of their changes, the brain changes, the structure of the myelin sheets around the neuron changes, and the pathways are much faster to develop and bring desirable outcome. Where in contrast, training is a willingness of the object, like a trainer, to impact unwilling decision of the subject, the learner, and make an impact, either physical or emotional. So now the physical impact would be punishing, beating, shock collars, prong collars, e-collars, all kind of collars, because they are, if used properly, if that can be used properly, if the dog can associate immediate doing with the consequences, they would stop doing it. But they would stop doing it because of the layer of trauma imposed on them. And the physiological memory is instant. So the body gonna prevent experiencing the same pain again through the complex web of interconnected senses that were actually present at that time. And also, that's a physical abuse, and the positive reinforcement is an emotional abuse. Because what brings a learning curve, or actually training curve, is not giving the food or giving the treat when the dog did what we wanted to do.
They're making survival conditional.
Because we withhold the treat if they don't do it. And that withholding the treat when the performance is not there leaves a mark of betrayal. I need to do to deserve to eat. And that's something what the dogs, and maybe I would understand that life in the dogs that are performed for the humans, like a hunters, and you need to do this and I need to do that, and we meet in the beginning, you do yours, I do mine, we share the food, right? But the pets are different level, different breed of the dogs, because pets are emotional support and emotional need of the dogs to fill this gap of the loneliness in this contemporary world, and they pay a big price of that.
Yeah, I see the military dogs that jump out of planes. I watched a whole documentary of it the other day. These dogs are amazing, and they do it willingly. And they really do have the mindset for that kind of work. Just like show dogs have the mindset to be shown. Hunting dogs have the mindset to go to hunt or to retrieve or to look at truffles or whatever. We have bred 95% of dogs to just come to our house and be our dog. So, that has a lot to do with it. And it's up to us to create that value for them so that they can be true and happy, whole dogs.
And you know what interesting was, now that you said like way we bred them, we crossed the line so many times with a lot of things. Like we bred such a deviation and such a syndromes that wouldn't survive the nature in like heartbeat, right? We used those traits as a genetic mutations and worked on them, manipulating the dog body, causing enormous suffering and pain, just to have them as much as possible human-like. Shortening the face, having a flat face like a human does. Even the little bichons that you mentioned were like Belgian sailors were like trying to get those white dogs from the Barbet and every other the water spaniels that were like very popular at that time.
Yeah, and they're related to Maltese.
All
it's
of
so
them,
crazy,
like,
right?
Yeah, kind
There's
of like
4 different ones that come from Malta, and Bichon is one of them.
But what is the most important connection with them is that space triangle, like they would call, like
the
Sander would
expression,
call expression. and expression is a baby-like.
Yeah.
And in a history, when you read the history of the breeds, and then because I was really, when I was learning how to show dogs, I was always going about that first thing. I was read a book about, when I was learning about a poodle, for the first time, I was reading Faust, because in a Faust in Germany, the poodle would be talked about for the first time. And then I was studying the poodle from ancient place in the history up to the modern world of show dog. And maybe that's what made me a world famous, because I knew poodle inside out. There was not a corner about a poodle I didn't explore. Same happened to the Bichon. And the research led me to understand of these letters that the sailors would write home to their children, and the wife that would let, because they would sail out for like a month and 6 months, sometime a long time, to go and fish and do whatever they were doing. And then they said, like, I miss you, but every single time when I look at Rexy, or whatever the name of the dog was, I can feel that you two are next to me. And there is a lot of, and then, so that was the first way in which this toy dog, now the retrieving dogs, like those water dogs, had pretty significant work to do. But now for the first time, we see lab dog emerges. And the only thing that sailors wants to have is them in the arm to feel that connection with their babies at home. And they actually not only assume that that's something that they have a lot of evidence in the letters that they were saying home, mentioning the dogs and mentioning how the dogs are actually feeling the gap of the family that they're missing at their job far away from home. So that's maybe also interesting. So that's why it's so easy to fall in love with them, right? Because they are made to exploit our emotions. But at the same time, what comes to be the reason for them to survive gonna also be a very tiny, how you say that? It's a tiny line to cross that everything can go south.
Yeah.
Like with a little Mozart, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't really talk about obesity from food as affection and abuse.
I think that need I think their own topic.
That needs a whole
because I think all of that leads to nutritional behavior, and how actually the nutrients contribute to the development of the brain and the brain's possibility to explore the environment and participate within. I think that's something that we should cover, because it is beneath the coat. But let's see what the inspiration gonna bring for the next week. Do you have anything more to share, or to kind of like bring this closer to slowly to a closure?
Let's see. I just have the cost when it goes too far. I've got let's talk about this instead. When it's not simply projection.
Okay.
Dogs do have primary emotions: fear, joy, anger, attachment, distress, with well-mapped neural substrates. Harris and Provost found dogs pushed between an owner and a fake rival dog or another owner do show at least a primordial jealousy. And it's not necessarily jealousy, it is the loss of affection, or the loss of a resource. So they give you that look like, oh my God, I can't believe you're petting the other dog, So that is a real thing. But whether it's real jealousy like humans have, it's contested. Franz de Waal's term anthropodenial names the opposite error: reflexively refusing to grant a capacity the animal actually has. So sometimes grouped in that, what we're talking about today, is absolutely they don't give the dog credit for being intelligent enough to navigate the water bowl, or to navigate, where the bed is, or where the toys are, where to go to the bathroom. So unless you show them in a soft and gentle way, maybe they're going to ignore you. Because a lot of times when people yell at their dogs or scold their dogs, the dog just turns off. It's not that he can't hear you. He can hear half a mile away. But a lot of it is that they just turn off. They're like, you just yell for no reason. You have to, if you're yelling, you should yell for a reason, and it should be succinct. It shouldn't be spread out. Oh my God, I can't believe you peed on the floor and didn't eat your food and got over there and tore up a cushion and blah, blah. That's overwhelming to them. Critical anthropomorphism, using human experience as a hypothesis to be tested, not a conclusion, is a legitimate tool in ethology. So you can do tests. I mean, I'm sure Sasha does the same thing as well, just an observation. Clinical observation is a thing, and it's just as valid as any other theory in science. So that's something that just start observing your dogs. Just start thinking about how they act, how they react to what you do, and then try something different next time and see how they react. And in that way, I don't think that's hurting the dog per se. It's training you because you're going to have lots of dogs in your lifetime, not just the one.
Mm-hmm.
So any dog that can help you learn is also your teacher. And I wanted to bring up when you were talking about the teacher and the learner, when the learner is so excited to learn, sometimes they'll ask questions or perform behaviors that change the biology of the brain of the trainer. And in that way, we give to each other at the same time.
It's
So,
all, we are both teachers. How many times you are asked questions that not necessarily you considered angle at all, right? And then because the question brings the answer is always older than the question, but oftentimes the question need to be asked first, so the answer appears. And the teacher sometimes becomes a channel. And I know how valuable my interaction with my students. And I always, when they have nothing to ask, I know they didn't study anything. Do you
right.
have any questions? Do you have any questions? And the class is silent. I say, well, what have I done wrong, right?
Yeah.
But some other time they would be, oh my God, I don't understand this and I don't understand that and I think this and I think that, because oftentimes in this, because I try to inspire their critical thinking. And I must say, oftentimes I use tricks. And for example, in one, let's say on the page 23, I'm gonna write that I don't know, this is red. And then for the same thing on the page 55, I'm going to say this is blue. And until they do not ask me, can you make your mind, is it red or is blue? I know
Or
that
is there a
they did red.
significance between red and blue?
But first of all, they need to come to the point of make that conclusion, to ask a question, is it red or blue? And I must say, in that particular lesson, I wanted to use it in more often, but then I said, okay, I'm going to get more and more disappointed, because I need to understand that not everyone is so eager to learn like I was. I just can't say if I take something, I either going to do it the best possible I can, or I won't even start interacting with it, right? So I took that expectations of my students' shoulders. But for example, in that particular passionate poodle course, I had that course be taken, maybe 10,000 people took that course over the course since it was launched in 2012. And I had maybe 10 people ask me the question, is it blue or red? Because they actually read it. They were actually not only read it, but they put it in play, and they couldn't figure out what the next step, because they need to solve that puzzle in order to cross the game on the next level. And once you start making that game, then you actually cannot cross the level until you are not certain which direction you need to go. And you don't know, because I said for the same thing, I said two different things naming the same thing, and you can move on if you do not clarify which one of these two is true. And you can't do that until you do not ask a question. So, well, I love being asked questions more than I asking questions, more than I love asking questions, because the questions and students help us grow. And that's really important. Notice. Thank you. Yeah. That was interesting conclusion. So do you have something else on the bullet list?
Yeah, I've got just two paragraphs. Punishment based on imagined guilt, which damages trust and often worsens the behavior. Missed pain and illness, because stoic dogs don't complain the way a human would. Separation anxiety mismanaged as sulking rather than a genuine panic disorder. And it is an actual panic disorder in a dog. Costumes, crowds, and forced hugs tolerated by the dog rather than enjoyed. Just because they're a dog doesn't mean they have to learn to accept all that touching. They deserve to have their bubble just like everybody else. The benefits worth keeping. And these can be neither here nor there. It's up to the individual to understand it. Um, the owners that do this generally invest more in veterinary care, enrichment, and training. It underwrites much of the animal welfare movement historically. So animals have it better today than they ever did because
Mm,
of anthropomorphism. Empathy is a better default starting point than treating a dog as a stimulus response machine. The
mm,
fix is calibration, not elimination. So fine tune how you're acting with the dog. Instead of saying, oh, the dog feels this or it is acting like this, look to yourself first because the dog will always feed off of you, always.
mm,
It's going to look to you because remember, it's the best observation um, species that we have close to us. So they're observing you, and if you give them something different, they're going to fine tune the way they react to you.
mm.
So,
Every single time when you want different response from them, we need to be a different trigger, both
mm,
emotionally and physically. What we do, what we say, what they feel around us. Because yeah, you're right. The dog was actually 5,000 years uh, get closer to the humans than any other animal. And it's almost come logically impossible to understand why the humans and how this actually contact happen when humans and wolves in the nature are much of competitors. And even today, we have such a big animosity towards wolves. We are killing them. We are taxidermy them. We are kind of, we urge them to the level of distinction in a lot of places, including Yellowstone almost collapsed because we killed all the wolves. And yet somehow that creature managed to be the first one to get close to the humans. The first next animal, why wouldn't we come up with the idea, why do we need to hunt bisons and why do we need to hunt deers? Can we just start breeding them in some closed enclosure that we
mhm.
don't need to go out there every single day? We just, put them in the enclosure, we start breeding them and we start eating them. That happened 5,000 years after the man and dog made the first contact, or actually man or wolf, or whatever. There is also that's maybe a topic for its own episode, because it's
Mhm.
fundamentally important to understand who approached first and why. And
But
I
then
think
look what
like
happened.
yeah,
Look
what
what
happened?
happened when we did do that. The dogs helped us hunt because hunting was important, yes? So then we say, okay, let's just put them in a pen and then we'll just kill them as we need them. But look what's happening to our food systems. Look
Oh my
what's
God,
happening to our
don't go
prairies.
there.
Look what's happening to all of those things. Buffalo and the auroch, who is no longer with us, um, they helped keep those healthy so that the plants were healthy. And it's a whole beautiful ecosystem. Every single spot of survival is filled with something.
Mm,
So we needed the bison to be free. We needed the aurochs to be free. We needed the wolves to be free to control the aurochs and the deer and everything else. Everything helps everything else survive. And it's a whole big, beautiful cycle that goes around over and over again. But when we isolate, especially a creature like a herding creature, uh, you know, that's what happens. It degrades. Those animals were meant to roam, not be stayed in a pen. Their meat suffers, their happiness suffers. The enrichment that they normally would have had living on grass and walking around instead of just sitting on a feedlot is diminished.
mm.
The beauty of what they are is diminished because of that way of raising them. So I would much rather, if you can catch something and eat it, then you should be able to do that,
I kind of love.
you know?
No, I agree with that. My point here was like, how did we ended up having an idea to make a contract with a wolf? Because before we made a contract with some animal that can actually contribute us. I completely understand what you say. My
I think,
hypothesis in this question
yeah,
was
I
like,
think it was the wolf who decided first.
yeah, but
And actually, if you go through their, well, if you go through Jennifer Bishop Jenkins' beautiful 15 coat types, she
mhm,
actually has the history of the dog, the history of the canid, and you can actually see it, they split. So one was not a true wolf in and of itself. So the wolf split apart from domesticated canis.
mm,
So as that going on, they saw that we left scraps and they got them. And it developed from there.
just
They
then
decided to
we
get
saw
closer
them.
and closer to us rather than the other way around.
And what you said, you had like a very nice saying in what moment in which said like they were observing us for the thousands of years, and that's their competitive evolutionary advantage, and they did it 10,000 years ago, and in the same way they are doing it today.
To
It
survive.
was done to survive. It was done by the descendants of the gray wolf, but it's done today by your little chihuahua and the doodle at your home in the same way, because leads them to a known way of surviving next to a human by fitting in. But in order for them to know where to fit in, they need to observe. But the problem with us today is that we actually created an environment that we cannot find our place within, let alone help someone else find their own.
Look how many humans are suffering because of the way we live today.
But yeah.
That's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother thing.
And maybe, but I think like professional grooming would benefit about knowing these things and exploring these things, because we can be on the forefront of helping people and helping pet parents make these informed decisions about how their behavior in all of these ways in which anthropomorphism is not used properly to guide our relationship forward in building empathy towards something that's different. And slowly, by making a better relationship with the dogs, we might end up down the road making a better relationship with each other.
And all the other animals as well. Instead of just, they're in our way.
Just shoot them.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess like we'll come up with some nice topic next week, I'm sure. And is there anything else you want to share maybe?
I don't. Do we have any questions?
Do we have any questions? Not yet. This was like, because I think like, I know actually, oftentimes when this topic is in play, the people got shocked because they didn't expect, they don't maybe even comprehend that what they do from the perspective as a Mozart family, they didn't know that they did anything wrong. They didn't know that. And oftentimes when these topics open so deep and so like a scientific maybe language discussion as we had it today on one end, on the other end, we shared like everyday stories with the dogs we know suffered in this context. The people are actually cold showered. So if you find yourself cold showered with this, do not take it offensive. Sit with it. Journal about it. Be aware about what you do, because that little creature depends on anything you believe it's right for them to be done, because that's what we're going to do. And no matter of our intention, what matters is how that lands on their level of consciousness, on their level of species-appropriate perception of the world, that they are capable of envisioning the world. And then within their own level of consciousness in which they have that sense of self and the sense of environment in which self experience its world and its place, then we are able to provide them that safe distance in which they, by observation, can find the right food place next to us. And that's always best if given a choice. And that place is looked by the choice and chosen by the choice, because those relationships are forever and they're thriving the well-being of both species included in that relationship.
That's good.
With that said, we wish you nothing but the best until the next episode of our podcast, Beneath the Canine Coat, with Michelle and Sasha. And until next Monday, thank you, Michelle, again for the wonderful day. And then thank you, everyone watching us, and see you next Monday. Bye.